Tell how the angels in chorus sang as they welcomed his birth. Glory to God in the highest, peace and good tidings to earth. Tell me the story of Jesus.
Hello, and welcome to the Detectives. Today we're going to investigate case number 8 in the life of Jesus of Nazareth, the most wonderful man who ever lived. The story is called Help, Where's the Life Belt? My name is Ian, and when we have learned the facts of this case, we will ask ourselves the question, like all good detectives, how did he do that? We don't know what Jesus of Nazareth looked like. He lived before they had invented cameras, and there are no photographs of him. And all we know from the Bible record is that he had a beard. But as his mother was Jewish, and as he was born in Bethlehem in Judea, we imagine that he looked like this, with dark hair and dark eyes, not blonde hair and blue eyes. He was called Jesus of Nazareth because although he was born in Bethlehem, he was brought up in Nazareth. And when he began to teach people about God and do wonderful things, they called him Jesus of Nazareth. On this particular day that we are thinking about, he has just fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves and 2 fish. And as he is tired, he sends away his disciples. Remember, disciples are the men who followed him, who helped him, who listened to what he taught and later on taught other people the same things that Jesus taught. He told them to get into a boat and go to the other side of the lake. And Jesus himself walked up into the mountain to spend time in prayer. He was going to spend hours in prayer up on the mountain, praying to his Father God. The thing is that when the disciples set out at the beginning of the evening, the lake was calm. But before long, a storm blew up. And as it got darker, the winds got stronger, and the waves crashed into the ship, and the rain began to fall down, and the disciples began to be afraid. And in the midst of the storm, they are standing there wondering whether they will ever get to the other side, or whether there'll be so much water in the boat that the boat is going to sink and they will all drown. And they ask themselves the question, where is Jesus? He would help us. But Jesus had not yet come to them. However, up on top of the mountain, even though it was dark, Jesus saw his disciples, and he knew that they were upset and that they were afraid. You know, no matter how small you and I may be, no matter how insignificant we may be, Jesus can still see when we are upset, and he can come and help us. So Jesus comes down to help them. But look, he is walking on top of the water. He's not swimming. He's not rowing in a boat. He is walking on top of the water, and he is not sinking into the water. And they were right out in the middle of the lake, and Jesus is walking on the water in the middle of the lake, and he is not sinking, and he is not drowning. Now, you can well imagine that nobody had ever seen anything like this before. Nobody had ever seen a man walking on the water, so the disciples are scared. Help! There's a ghost coming towards us. There's a spirit walking on the water. What are we to do?" And although they were afraid of the storm, they were even more afraid of this ghost that was coming to them, thinking, "What are we going to do if this ghost comes to us?" And they were scared. But Jesus calls out to them and says, "Don't be scared. Don't be afraid. It is I, it's me. It's Jesus of Nazareth walking towards you on the water. Don't be afraid. I'm coming to help you." Well, Peter is very excited. He says, "Lord, if it really is you, and if you can walk on the water, call me to come to you on top of the water." In other words, he said, "Lord, I want to walk to you, but I want to walk on top of the water. Can you help me to walk on top of the water like you were doing?" Well, I don't think I'd have asked that. I'd have been very afraid that I might fall down into the water and drown. But Peter was so pleased to see the Lord, and he believed so much in the Lord that he said, "Call me to come to you walking on top of the water." And Jesus said, "Come." And Peter got out of the boat, and he put his feet on the water, and suddenly he found he was walking towards Jesus in the middle of the storm on top of the water. So here we have Jesus walking on the water and Peter walking on the water. And I expect that Peter was very, very excited. Wouldn't you be if you were walking on top of the water in the middle of a storm and going towards the Jesus of Nazareth that you loved? The problem was that after a while, Peter stopped looking at Jesus and started looking at the waves, and they were big, even though he was walking on top of them. And he listened to the wind that was howling around him, even though he was walking through the wind. And he began to be afraid. And he began to sink through the water. Now, you know, it wasn't that Jesus couldn't keep him walking on the water. For as long as Peter was looking at the Lord, he was able to walk on top of the water. But the moment he began to be afraid and took his eyes off Jesus and worried about the things that were going on round about him, he began to sink. And he does the right thing. He cries out and says, "Lord, save me." And Jesus was instantly next to him and reached out his hands and held the hands of Peter and pulled him up through the water so that he didn't sink. But Jesus did say to him, "Where was your faith?" In other words, why did you get worried about the wind and the waves and the rain? Why didn't you just trust me? And the moment he saved Peter in the middle of the storm, everything became calm. Storms stopped raging. The wind stopped howling. The waves stopped crashing. And they were at the other side of the lake, safe. And what did they say? "Now we know, Jesus, that you are the Son of God." How did he do that? How did Jesus manage to walk on top of the water without sinking? How did he manage to help Peter to walk on top of the water without sinking? And how did he manage to still the storm as soon as they were at the boat and there was no more wind or waves? Here's the answer. just as the disciples said, they believed, and I believe, that Jesus could do this. He could walk on top of water because he is the Son of God. God can do anything he wants to. He can walk on water. He can calm a storm. He can rescue his disciples, and he can make other people walk on water as well. How did Jesus do that? He did it because he is the Son of God. And these miracles, a miracle is something spectacular that happens that we can't explain. These miracles that Jesus did proved to many in his life, and they prove to me today, that Jesus was no ordinary man. Although he was a real man, he was also God. And if you and I are afraid of what's going on around us today, let's put our faith and trust in him. The Son of God will look after us.
Fasting alone in the desert, tell of the days that are past, how for our sins he was tempted, yet was triumphant at last. Tell of the years of his labor, tell of the sorrow he bore. He was despised and afflicted, homeless, rejected, and poor. Tell me the story of Jesus, write on my heart every word. Tell me the story most precious, sweetest that ever was heard. Tell of the cross where they nailed him, writhing in anguish and pain. Tell of the grave where they laid him, tell how he liveth again. Love in that story so tender, clearer than ever I see. Say, let me weep while you whisper, love paid the ransom for me. Tell me the story of Jesus, write on my heart every word. Tell me the story most precious, sweetest that